Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Cash Mahesh. He is a president and a had with a proven track record of accelerating global business growth through strategic initiatives. With an engineering background, I really wanted to discuss with Cash how, as a president, he views the effectiveness of technical employees communicating with non-technical audiences. And I suspect with his technical background, I'm sure he'll have some valuable insights. So welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Cash.
Thanks, Neil. Really appreciate this opportunity. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Wonderful. So first thing, as I mentioned, you started your career as an engineer, but you're now a president. So what surprised you most about how important communication became as your role changed?
Neil, when I started as an engineer, like most of us engineers, I started as an introvert, and at sort of early days, I had good mentors who clearly told me that communication is going to be a key piece of who I'm going to be in the future. So as I spent early years in my career, communication became a very important thing. Me getting out of my introvertedness was important. And I'd say, like, I'd attribute my success in my career a lot to my communication skills.
Nice. So I'm curious then, what did you believe good communication meant as an engineer, and how has that definition changed over time?
I'd say, like, I mean, engineers typically are good at problem solving, as you know. So, and engineers are not good at communicate. I mean, I deal with a lot of friends, colleagues, etc. About. Uh, I think the one skill engineers could do much better is communication. So again, I was not a great communicator when I started. I'd be honest, especially. I was born in another country and English was not my first language. So I struggled early part of my career. So I really took that as an opportunity to kind of convert that into a skill and something that's positive and not a negative thing for me. So I had to put in a lot of effort to get there. It was not easy, but then once I got it, it just kind of was wondrous for me in my career.
Where do you think technical employees most struggle often when communicating with non-technical audiences?
Again, as engineers, we're problem solvers and we tend to get to the solution very quickly. That's kind of the gist of my what I went through, what I've seen others go through. We want to just quickly jump to the conclusion and give a short explanation and get it done with. A lot of audiences need more than that. I mean, people need to understand what the problem we're trying to solve is, how we solved it, not just the what, the how. So I think it needs a lot more kind of refining than what a normal engineer would do for communication.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Cash. I mean, I when I first started giving presentations, it had to be in front of management. I was giving project status updates, and I thought I was doing a good job until I realized that after my first presentation that wasn't the case because I got a whole lot of questions afterwards that I thought I had answered during the presentation.
Right.
And looking back on it all these years later, I just think that especially as a technical person, you know all this technical expertise, but perhaps we're not the best at putting it in a way that non-technical people can understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think again, I use the word introvertedness. Majority of engineers, I think I can make that general comment that are introverts. And when you're in front of an audience, whether it's like one person or 1,000 people, you want to get it done with and finish the communication, right? That's the problem, also, right? I mean, you're just anxious to kind of get it done with, and that's not how it works in the real world. I mean, there are back and forth questions. You need to convince the audience. You need to sell a concept. So that needs a lot more than just getting it done and moving on.
Can you think of an example when you were in the audience and a technical person was giving a presentation and wasn't doing a really good job? And what do you think they could have done to improve I guess, their performance?
Yeah, this happens every day for me, right? I mean, since I'm in senior management roles over the last kind of 15 years or so, I constantly encounter, in fact, like happened yesterday when a senior engineer was presenting to not just me, our senior leadership team, and he was struggling. He was struggling for a couple of different reasons. One, as I said before, he was pacing it too fast. He was just going fast. and gave the impression again he wanted to get it done with and call it done. So speed, pacing was a problem with him. He was nervous. I mean, everybody knew he was nervous. Like he was kind of literally a little bit shivering, and there was that. And then with all of that, I mean, he was just reading from the slides, right? I mean, he was not explaining things. He was reading from the slides. So I had talked to this particular person prior, like a week or so, and I actually given him some feedback. So, but when you're in front of an audience, it's a different game, right? I mean, you can practice all you want, but then you sit in front of 15 people. It's very different. So yeah, that's what happened with this person yesterday.
Yeah, that's such a issue I think a lot of us technical people have, Cash. There have been so many instances in which I've gone to conferences, and these are technical conferences. I'm sitting in the audience, and the person giving the presentation is reading the slides, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I can read just as well as you can. Who knows? Maybe I can read even better. And here you are, just reading these slides, and I'm just thinking, well, I mean, this is public speaking, not public reading.
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even people that are a little bit experienced have the same problem. I mean, they will do well privately, but then publicly, they'll just read from the slides.
Yeah, and the example you gave as a senior engineer presenting to people like yourself, yeah, you're certainly going to be nervous because you want to put your best foot forward in front of the senior management people. I know I did, and yet I completely wet the bed that first presentation, and you thought I would have improved for that second one. But
Yeah.
what's so interesting? I didn't make any adjustments at all. I did the exact same thing I did that first presentation. I got up there, I read them slides, and just
Yep.
like that senior engineer you mentioned, I tried to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Yep.
But that didn't happen. Ended up, they asked a whole bunch of questions afterwards, and if I wasn't sweating during the presentation and shivering like that senior engineer you mentioned, now I'm really shivering and sweating.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are smart people, right? I mean, you and I know that. I mean, these are people that are capable of doing wonders, but just the nervousness that takes them out.
Yeah. Another thing that even looking back when I worked as a product development engineer in the medical device industry is I was thinking a whole lot about what I was working on, but I never really thought much about the business, about what I was doing, how it was affecting the
Right.
business. So I'm curious, from your vantage point now as the president, what
Mhm.
signals would a technical person giving a presentation or just generally have to give or would give to
Mhm.
show that they are knowledgeable about the business as opposed to just the technology?
I mean, you hit it on the head, like in terms of what I went through in my transformation from an engineer to I actually went through into sales roles in then into kind of senior manager roles and into management. What I went through and what I would like for others to go through is that business focus, as you said. As an engineer, again, like you talk about like a technical problem and a technical solution, and your view ends there, and you think like that's the world. But if you zoom out, like from a business perspective, if you're working in a private or public company, it's a piece of the puzzle, right? I mean, the engineering piece, the R&D piece, it's just a piece of the puzzle. So again, there's marketing and other things that happens before in terms of what product needs to be made, what's the specification of the product. All of that is given to engineering. And then once a product is done, you need to market it, you need to sell it, you need to make money out of that. One thing I coach a lot of people, a lot of engineers, a lot of people, even now. One thing I at work and outside of work, and what I tell them is learn financials. Because if you want to get a business sense of your product, the best way is to understand. Because I go back to my first 5 years of career, I didn't know a thing about when somebody say EBITDA or revenue, or I didn't know a thing about it, right? So I went through that myself, and I strongly encourage engineers to learn financials because that gives you a business sense. You talk about cost of goods sold, you talk about like SG&A, you talk about EBITDA, cash flow. It just really makes sense from a business perspective what these things mean and why is what you do important. Once you know that, I think engineers have a huge advantage from a business sense. Again, I'm living example for that. Having that engineering sense from a business perspective goes a long way. If you're a non-engineer business, I think you'd be missing something. So it's a huge advantage for engineers, but a lot of engineers don't make that transition.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I remember when I was going to university, my first year, first semester, I took a class in engineering economics. probably one of my worst grades. Didn't think about it again until many years later, working as an engineer and giving presentations in front of management and thinking the science or the data will speak for itself, but
Mhm.
it won't. Knowing the business and knowing and being convincing as to why developing this potential or particular product would be beneficial to the organization, that's useful. And I think, a lot of us technical types, that's not something we really think about all that much until, well, and at least in my case, my project got canceled. And I thought, well, this whole presenting in front of people thing, maybe this is something I need to get better at.
Yeah, I mean, most organizations, engineering teams, R&D teams are working on what we call skunk works projects, right? I mean, it's engineers doing something like in the vacuum a little bit. A lot of them come to light and make big money for companies, but I think again, engineers need to understand like what I'm doing might be cool, but is it really making business sense? Is it really kind of going to make money for the company, or is it going to make a difference in the community? Whatever it is, that sense needs to be there.
Yeah. And when we were during this conversation, Cash, it reminded me of a conference that I went to a couple of summers ago. It was a
Hmm.
technical conference, and one of the people giving a presentation was a business development person.
Hmm.
And after the presentation, this person got a whole lot of technical questions he couldn't answer. And
Right.
he didn't have a technical background, I suspect. And as I said, there's a technical conference, mostly engineers in the audience.
Sure.
Luckily, there were two engineers from his company in the audience,
Hmm.
and the room was small enough that we could hear them from their seats, and they
Hmm.
answered all the questions. And
Wow.
I just remember thinking at the time, well, why didn't one of them present, or at least co-present with this business development person? And
Sure.
I just thought, well, maybe they just think that this whole presenting in front of people isn't part of their job. They're just supposed to focus on the technology. But I mean, this whole conversation about knowing the business as well, I think could have been really helpful to that business development person having a technical person by his side.
Yeah, honestly, like I mean, having been on the management side over 20 years now, there's the nervousness management has on bringing an engineer or engineering team like into a conversation like that because they're just not good at presenting. That's the perception at least, right? So they know the engineering piece and nothing else. So that's why having that transition or like knowing the business aspect, the financial aspects. You're right. Like, I mean, a lot of times I do bring my teams along, meet with customers and others. Make sure that I have an engineer or engineering team with me. So I think that's a good combination, having engineers and non-engineers kind of giving that kind of a critical presentation. But engineers having that business sense helps a lot.
Yeah, and ultimately, at least in my mind, it's easier to give the resources for a technical person to improve their communication skills than it is to expect a non-technical person to know what the technical person already knows, and then have to give a presentation in front of a bunch of engineers who already are more technically minded, aren't thinking about business questions, asking you all these technical questions, and they're sitting there like a deer in headlights.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's why I said, like, I think engineers truly have an advantage there because you know the technology, you know the product, and if you have the business sense, that's best of both worlds.
100%. So I'm curious then, what do you think an organization can do to, or at least what role can an organization play in helping their technical professionals improve their communication skills?
Uh, some organizations do this. I work for many companies, as you probably know. Some companies do a good job in this exact thing you're talking about, which is like making sure that communication skills are can be improved. What I've gone through in my career is multiple companies. I've been offered courses. In fact, like in our company currently, we're going through teaching, training a lot of people on what we call power presenting. And in the past, I've gone through nonverbal skills, communication skills. So there are courses, there are things that companies can do, and I think this is where companies can do so much, but engineers have to be interested in participating in that. They'll have to kind of jump in and say, like, look, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to do this. This day and age, I mean, there are a lot of free opportunities even within companies. I mean, LinkedIn has got a whole package, as you probably know. And there Skillsoft is another software. I mean, companies use these things. There are resources available. You just have to go sign up and do that. So I think it goes both ways. Companies offering those packages and courses, but then individuals, engineers, engineering leaders will need to kind of go and join them and participate in them also.
Yeah, I think you're certainly right about that, Cash, because I mean, you don't want to be that engineer who's disgruntled because you didn't get the opportunity you thought you deserved because there was someone else who just was a better communicator than you. And I think in a lot of instances, that's exactly what happens. And then not only that, but just within the last couple, year or two, so many technical people are being laid off from jobs that they thought, well, I'm going to be here forever. I mean, I work at, this particular company. I'm making this amount of money. They'll never get rid of me. And then,
Yep.
hey, they get rid of thousands of you, and now you're on the market, and you never
Yep.
develop those communication skills. Well, good luck getting a job.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I don't know of anybody that's got good communication skills that fail in their jobs. It's a very fundamental thing people sometimes miss out.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious about even, your improvement or your journey in public speaking, Cash. Is speaking in front of others something you've always been good at? And if not, what did you do to get better at it?
I mean, if you had seen me like 30 years ago when I started my career, again, as I said, I was born in India and I had very poor communication skills. On top of that, I was an introvert, as I said. I was an engineer, so you pile all of those together. I was just a mess to start with. I couldn't even communicate two sentences in front of anybody. Could forget an audience, just one person, right? So I struggled. I struggled big time, and at one point, I thought that's okay because I'm an engineer and leave me in my cube and I'll do my job. And I was excellent technically. So I thought the first 2, 3 years went well. I didn't have to talk to people. But then, job circumstances, I was thrown into trade shows and conferences and I had to communicate. I struggled a little bit initially. But then, honestly, as I said before, I took it upon as a challenge. I knew I was really lacking that skill. And I wanted to turn that into a positive, not an English native speaker, coming from another country, on and on and on, everything I mentioned. I want to really turn that around and make that a positive. So it was a conscious effort. I had good mentors, so I sought help. Companies provided these things, and I took some private courses too, to be honest with you, on especially nonverbal communication skills and so forth. So it was a conscious effort. It took probably like 2, 3, 4 years. That's what I tell when I'm coaching people, if they're struggling with communication, non-native, native, doesn't matter. I just tell them like you have to be patient, you have to work with yourself. It's not like a 30-day thing and all of a sudden you're a good speaker. You just need to consciously kind of, I mean, these days you have technology, right? So you record your own conversation, listen to it. It's a little awkward to listen to yourself, I'll tell you that. But then when you do that, you know where you're pausing, where you're going too fast, what kind of accents you have, all of that. You can do it yourself with all the technology we have. So back to me, it was a conscious effort. It probably took me like from me being an awkward, socially awkward, communication awkward, horrible, introverted engineer, speaker, to a somebody that I like myself. It probably took a good 5 to 10 years, Neil. It was not a quick switch. So you have to be patient with yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, and kudos to you for making those adjustments. I mean, English is my first language and only language. And yet, when I had to give with my first job, I worked as a research associate and I did a lot of work in a lab and writing protocols and reports. And I never had to present anything. I just passed along with anything I generated to my boss and he did with it what he did with it. And I didn't mind that arrangement at all. It was with that second job that I had to give presentations. It was a different company. Now they're telling me I got to be a project lead, and as part of that job, I got to get in front of senior management on a monthly basis
Right.
and then talk about project status. I was like, well, damn. I mean, when I first took the job, I didn't know that was going to be part of it. It was only a few months into it that they told me this. But it's a good thing they did because if they told me that during the interview, I might have stayed a research associate. Yeah,
You like, I mean, a few years later, you're doing a whole communication package here, podcast here.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, 100%. Because, as my project got canceled eventually,
Sure.
and I look back on it, maybe if I was just a bit better communicating the usefulness of this project to the senior management,
Mhm.
maybe it could be $1 million or millions of dollars of revenue for the company today. But I guess we'll never know. So that definitely was the wake up call that I
Yeah.
needed at the time. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm curious then, when it comes to the presentations or just communicating with others, say you have to give a presentation in front of a group. Do you have a process for putting your presentation together? And if so, what is it?
Honestly, Neil, it's evolved over the years. I've been doing this for as you know, like about over 20 years of leadership. It's evolved quite a bit. And these days, I'm a board member. Sometimes I'm on the board, like listening to others. Sometimes I am presenting to the board. So all those situations. if I look back, do I have a process for it? I'm not big on writing a whole script. I'll be honest with you. I have had a lot of colleagues that every page, if there's a 20-page deck you're presenting, they will script the whole thing line by line, memorize it, practice like 10 times, 15 times. I've seen people like my colleagues do that. I figured early in my process that's not my style. And I think listeners of your podcast here, I think you'll have to figure out what works for you. So if scripting, heavy scripting works for you, do it. For me, what worked was, and again, it evolved, so it's not like just happened the first time. These days, when I'm presenting to like some serious audience, like a board or whatever it is, what I do is like if there's 20-page deck, I'm really obviously reviewing it and making sure I know the content really well. If somebody is putting the presentation for me together, I'm just going through it and knowing I make sure that like I know every page in and out if questions are asked. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is what works for me is I just literally write down two, three, four bullets for that page, what I want to talk about. And even within those three, four bullets, I will highlight or put it in bold, like one or two words. So that's always in front of me. And I just glance at it and make sure that like I'm touching on all those points because I can build a story around that's another whole topic I'll come to in a second. I can build a story once I know those five bullets and four words or three words out of those, right? I know the content, so I'm going to build a story. So that's how it works these days. It's those kind of cheat sheet, if you will, is what works for me. But more importantly, the point I really wanted to say here is you have to communicate a story. So you're selling something, you're communicating something, you really want to tell a story that's interesting, captivating to the audience, right? Because they lose you. Like if you have 20 slides, if you're presenting for 45 minutes, within the first 3, 4 minutes, they're going to lose you if you're boring. So you have to figure out what's captivating for the audience a little bit and make it a story. So a lot of times what I do is I start with a question or a problem and then talk about the solution. So there's a whole method to my madness, but I can elaborate on it if you want. But that's kind of my thing. Cheat sheet storytelling. That's my secret.
Your approach is very similar to the one that I recommend, Cash. I'm not a
Okay.
fan of memorizing a
Okay.
presentation either, because
Sure.
what ends up happening is you might end up like that senior engineer who gets up in front of people and it's time for prime time and all these lights are shining in front of you and all these senior level people are looking at you and you may forget a part of that presentation. Then what do? You and then you're kind of spiraling. But I really like your approach of knowing what bullets you need to hit for each slide and
Mhm.
practicing so that you hit all the bullets. So you don't have to memorize every word, but as long as you hit every concept that each bullet conveys, well,
Mhm.
you did a good job of doing or presenting that particular slide. And I
Yep.
also like your idea of telling a story.
Yep.
When I first started giving presentations, I didn't know the importance of that. I didn't even think it was appropriate, especially
Mhm.
for a technical presentation, but especially if you're speaking to a non-technical audience, I say it's even more important because data is boring. And if you're just hitting people with data and charts and graphs and expecting that to tell what they need to know,
Yep.
the chances of that are pretty slim. And you're right, within the first couple of minutes, they're going to tune out. They're going to
Absolutely.
look at their phones. They're going to hopefully they don't fall asleep, and if they do, hopefully they don't snore. But they're going to be doing other things besides listening to you, and it was basically a waste of your time and their time as well. So I certainly I appreciate your approach to giving your presentations.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm really curious then to ask this next question. So for the people who are listening or watching our conversation, Cash, and they see the usefulness of becoming a more effective communicator, where do you think they should start?
Um, First of all, I think, again, going back to my journey, you have to be self-aware. I think self-awareness is probably key. And I would say, like I said, coach a lot of people. People don't have a good grasp of who they are. I would start there, which means it's not that like you need to beat yourself down in terms of I'm a horrible communicator. That's not my point. There are a lot of good communicators that don't even know they're good communicators. They just think they're really bad, horrible. So I think you need to have a little bit of self-awareness in terms of where's your starting point? Second thing I would say is you need to focus on what are your strengths. I'm not just talking about communication strengths, but just in general, what are your strengths? So I might be, again, if you're a technical person, technology A, technology B, where's my strength and where's my weakness a little bit. So I think you need to kind of have a good grasp of that. And then probably the third thing I would say is what we talked earlier in the conversation, which is, am I bringing in enough of business sense and financial sense to this? Or am I too dry? I mean, you know this, you've done it, I've done it. You can give a technical presentation that's too boring. Everybody listening, have no clue what you're talking about, and they zone out, they snore, like you said. So that you need to avoid that. That'd be the third thing, is like really knowing what to infuse to make it interesting, your conversation. And probably the fourth thing I would tell you is, once you know your weaknesses and strengths, get some help. I mean, you think you can figure it out yourself. Sometimes people do, so I'm not against those people, but raise your hand. And whether it's you sign up for a course, we talked about like some organizations have like free Skillsoft or whatever it is. Do those things. Or have a mentor, have like, reach out to like one of your senior managers and say like, look, I just need help on this one. And mentorship is something many of the large organizations offer. Sign up. I mean, sign up for mentorship and tell the mentor, look, I'm good with everything else. I just need some help on communication. A lot of my mentees do that and focuses entirely on communication, nothing else, right? So those are some of the things I've done in my career, and I encourage some of my kind of mentees to also.
Man, that's excellent advice. This has been a great conversation, Cash. Thank you so much for being a guest. How could people get in touch with you?
Look, I'm on LinkedIn, and I have a lot of connections. My formal name is Prakash Mahesh. You can search for me in LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way to communicate. My email address is there. Look, as I said, I coach, train a lot of people. That's part of my hobby, you can call it. If anybody needs help from your group, Neil, love to kind of help them. But it's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Time flew by. I'll be honest with you.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Cash.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.